So they go in, and it's very effective, because initially you don't realize, because you're only little, you don't really realize what's going on, obviously not. And then you have these, commands that are embedded and most important one, which you have literally almost from day one, is make sure you're a good girl. And good girl means do whatever it is that your job requires. So if the steamer, which is sometimes what they're called, if the steamer requires you to do X, Y, and Z, if it's fellatio or whatever, carnal requirements, doesn't really matter what it is, make sure you're a good girl. Be a good girl. Do as you're told. So you learn, after you've been punished severely because you haven't done what you're told, you get punished, and the punishment is severe. It really is. And if it's to you yourself and you're not particularly too worried, then you end up doing the same again and becoming quite sort of arsey and say things and refuse to do things. Then they realize what it is that will make you do as you're told, to make you be a good girl. And for me, it was always my animals. But they always said to me, if you consistently are defiant, we will just you won't be worth anything. You won't be worth anything for us. And we can make sure that you're gone in an instant. That's how they are. If you don't make money, they used to joke with me when I got older, and they say, well, you're sitting on your biggest asset. Lovely. So yes, I very soon realized I was sitting on my best asset, and I realized that I had to wait. I had to wait until I was old enough and I could get away from them safely. But I didn't realize until much, much later, until I'd gone through and survived the 7th of July London bombings. I don't know whether we can say that. Can we say that? The 7th of July London incident, shall we say. And after that, and I had been struck on the head, I was unfortunately left unconscious for quite some time. And during that unconscious period, all sorts of memories came back. So the picture I sent you was at the first London bombings memorial, where I was off to meet the various individuals, Prime Minister and John Reed and others, Tessa Jowell and various other people.
Is that the first photo?
It's the one with the big 7 in it. It's got a picture of me holding a big wreath with a 7
Oh
in
yeah,
it. Because that time because I've got such a big mouth, they said, well, you're the one who's the big mouth, and this is all the 7 survivors, because we weren't getting the treatment we needed, and we weren't getting the help we needed, and we weren't getting any financial help, and some people couldn't work and some people couldn't walk, and it was absolutely horrid. And so they'd asked me to be the mouthpiece and meet when I was going to Number 10 and meeting with them, and going to the Home Office and meeting with John Reed and Tessa Jowell and all these others. So that was one of the memorials, and I took a big 7, which was from all of us, from all of the survivors, and we all chipped in as best we could. And I took that, and that was taken just outside one of the events that I was going to. So this was the start. Unfortunately, this was at King's Cross, and we managed to afford a really beautiful number 7. And this was from all 7 survivors. And this was the start of all of the memories. So this was in the first year thereafter. So that was 2006, outside King's Cross, which is where the memorial happened. And all of that then started flooding through. So it was almost like the bang on the bonds, when you hit your head that severely and you become unconscious, you then start understanding all these other items that had been sort of placed in the back of your mind, and all these other aspects with words and phrases and, specific tones, and these low tones with individuals utilizing, like like almost day-to-day phrases, but saying and weaving commands in those phrases. So being a good girl was one of them. One of the other ones for the kill switch particularly was the one that was a highly embedded command. And I recall that one they started embedding at the age of 12. And that was a must obey one. So not only was that you must be a good girl, be a good girl, that was one of them. The other one was, if you hear this command, this is what you need to do. So the first command was, if you hear X, Y, and Z, you need to make sure you have whatever. You go to the cupboard in the kitchen, or you go to the cupboard in the bathroom, and you go and you take absolutely everything that's in your medicine cabinet. You take all of it, all of the tablets, all of whatever it is. And if that's not enough, you go to the kitchen and you take everything else to make sure that you become unalived. So that was the one. The second one was after the age of 12. Francesca, this is what the kill switch is. It's a permanent trigger that's placed in your mind over significantly traumatic events that they cause with you. So they either bring you very, very close to almost taking your last breath, because I remember that at age 12. And then these are the kill switch that they insert into your mind. So it's a very strong, must obeyed, embedded command, and yeah, you do get shamed for disobedience. Absolutely, you do. Yes, you do. And there's awful punishments for disobedience. If you don't do as you're told, they will find ways to shame you, and they will make sure that not only you know about the shame, but any of the others, the lads and the girls that are going off on a job with you, they will make sure that they know that you're ashamed because you weren't a good girl and you didn't do what you were told. So there's many different levels of shameful practices that they will go through. And this is, they don't feed you before you go out because they don't want you vomiting. But if you do vomit, then they will make you eat the vomit. And another reason why they don't feed you is because obviously you need to go have a potty break, and you can't go to potty. So, it becomes, again, very shameful. These people, all they're interested in is servicing the steamers, servicing those individuals that have paid. They're only interested, show me the money. That's all they're interested in. And when you become a favorite, which unfortunately for me, I became a favorite very, very quickly, because when I was young, I was really, really slight. And the second picture I've shown you was obviously not this one. There's one with me with short hair. And because I decided at one point that I would be defiant. One of my defiance, I chopped all my hair off and I took it to the side and I just cut it. And I thought, right, that's going to put them off. No chance. So the one where I'm sitting on the couch with my short hair, that's the second one. That was my act of defiance. So I've chopped off my hair many times as an act of defiance. So when you start seeing the progression, the defiance is quite clear. But after the incident of 7/7, I started to remember, and I realized that the kill switch was the taking of the tablets and various other things, or whatever I could find in the kitchen. That's one of the kill switches. The other kill switch was that when I was in a vehicle, that I would then pull the handles and I would pull the steering wheel towards either a bridge, or I would pull it towards trees or something that would cause a significant car crash. So that was the other kill switch. So depending on my age, depending on where I was, and depending how reckless I'd been and how defiant I'd been, that is part and parcel of what the particular kill switch would be. I did learn after they killed my animals, and they'd taken one of my kittens and thrown it against the wall and killed the kitten. And when they also had let one of my dogs outside, one of my puppies outside, and it was killed in front of me in the middle of the road, I very soon realized that I didn't want any more animals to be killed because of me. And that's how they were able very, very carefully to control me, because they would always be saying, you're going to be a good girl, and you have a new kitten, and your new kitten will be fine when you come home. So these people are not to be messed with. And it is possible that after my period of service, shall we call it, my period of service and going out on jobs was finished at a certain age. By the time I was 15 and a half was my last jobs. That's when I ran away. By that time, by the time you're sort of 15-ish, like in the time of the picture, people aren't really, the steamers are not really that interested in you, because you're starting to develop and you're starting to become a lot more obvious that you're growing up. And so I was mainly used for cleanup jobs, or I was used for lookout jobs. So I didn't really have to do too much unless there was somebody that would have preferred somebody a little bit older. And that's all part and parcel of it. However, from the age of 12, 13-ish, it was sort of 1972, 1973, that they started instilling the embedded commands, ones you have to obey, ones that you have to do. And that's when they start telling you when they're drowning you, and you feel that you want to live, obviously, it ends up where you start gasping and you think, well, that's it. That's it. I'm not going to wake up anymore. But you do, because they're very, very good at what they do. They make sure that while you are gasping for breath, that they will tell you, these are the commands. If you hear these words in these phrases, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. So we want you to go to the medicine cabinet. If you hear this command, this is what you need to do. And they phrase it in such a way that it's hard to explain, but it's almost like a directive, but it's said in such a way that it becomes normalized. And because they do it so often when you are so young, sort of starting age 12, right through up to about 1977, you have the same thing put in. And then later, when they realize that you're getting older and that you possibly could be in a vehicle with somebody, and if you then are starting to shame them, or you've been sent out on jobs that are with, very, very influential people, very, very wealthy people, and that you might recognize, and some of them I did eventually start recognizing as I was getting older. When I was younger, I didn't really recognize them. They were just, dirty old men. That's all, as far as I was concerned. And they didn't particularly smell very nice. And I just never thought much of them. I used to look up and count squares or count the wallpaper. I would count in order just to get through it, which I believe for a survivor is quite normal. But getting back to the kill switch is when you get to the point where you're not that effective anymore. You're not the favorite anymore. So you're not the one that's making the most money for them. I mean, I think one of the days, when I look back, the one of the days I did 11 clients, different jobs in different areas, 11 in one day. That was the most I can remember. And my handler came back with a wad like this, huge wad of money. So, at the peak, I was making a huge amount of money for these people. So the kill switch was installed mainly because because I had become, over a period, I become really, really popular. I would say from, you know, the 70s, 1972, 73, those areas, right up to about 75. For some reason, they decided that, you know, this child was a favorite of theirs, and I ended up being shunted and taken and flown here, flown there, and going to various bases and being moved from country to country at night, being brought back in the morning, you know, do the job, be a good girl, get back in, change clothes, get back in, get back into the aircraft, and get back to country of origin. All of that. And you have to keep all that absolutely quiet. You can't, even if you're going to school, or even if you were homeschooled, you still wouldn't be able to say anything, because nobody actually believes you anyway.
Bloody hell, Beverly, you've come out the gate strong there, haven't you? And what a, you know, harrowing, good grief. I don't know where to begin. It really hit my stomach, some of the things you said right then, and you've lived it. So, you know, perhaps you say it in a way as if, but I'm just gobstruck hearing what you went through. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers are equally emotionally thinking, bloody hell, Beverly, you've been through it. So we appreciate you putting what a kill switch is in the context of your life. And it must be traumatic for you to go back to some of that. But it has made a lot of questions come in. People are fascinated by this thing called the kill switch. So did you want to keep going, or did you want me to just start giving you these questions?
No, I'm happy to also explain what happens. You know, we'll talk about where I've gone from tragedy to triumph, because up until the big bang on my head in the train, you know, I had very few unusual situations where I was in the house and I would be watching the door, and I used to think, you know, you stupid cow, what are you watching the door for? What's wrong with you? And then I'd be watching, you know, when you close the door, and then I couldn't close the door, and I'd open the door and think, no, there's nobody there. Or if I'd watch underneath the door to see whether the light had been switched on. And I would think to myself, why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Why are you doing that? And then I wouldn't drink water. And then I used to think, well, I can't remember why I can't drink water again. And then I could never, you know, there was like these gaps, and I couldn't think, well, I don't drink water. Why don't I drink water? That's a bit silly, you know, silly move. Why are you not drinking water? And, you know, there was a lot of these itty bitty things where you kind of think, I don't know why I do this, but I do this. And, you know, I used to get accused of being sort of too close to my animals, and used to love my animals too much. And I used to wonder why were these things, but I never ever, at that point, I never was able to put two and two together until the incident on the 7th of July, 2005 in London. And after I woke up from that, literally all hell broke loose. So not only did I remember the kill switch, I remembered the list of people. So I started writing feverishly. I sit in my bed, and then after the counter-terrorist police had me pinned in the house for 2 days, and told my partner to beetle off, not in those words, and used other words, asked her to beetle off, and that she wasn't allowed in the dining room, which is where they were, and they had the officers outside. And I was going through all of the books, going to try and remember who these people were, who the fifth bomber